obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth.
Lie. No man is obsolete.
It's a cookbook.
Who are we?
Emily, take the bandages off.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man.
This lemon sucker here. He's the most suspicious of the bunch.
My name is Talkie Tina, and I'm beginning to hate you.
I believe you're going my way.
Live from Willoughby at the heart of the Twilight Zone. Here are your hosts, Alex and Tyler, the prestigiously perfect podcast in which we call the Twilight Zone.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Alex,
And my name is Tyler.
and this is our maiden voyage. This is the first episode of The Twilight Gnome, a podcast about the Twilight Zone.
So join us as we step through into the Twilight Zone and deconstruct all the different episodes.
A little bit of backstory before we get into this. Like we already said, I'm Alex, and this is my brother Tyler. We were introduced to the Twilight Zone in 2007 during the 4th of July marathon. And today we are going to be discussing the episode that started off our love for this show. It is Stopover in a Quiet Town.
Yeah.
The original air date was April 24th, 1964, written by Earl Hamner Jr. and directed by Ron Winston. What did you overall, this is, I mean, obviously this was the first one that we were introduced to, so it has that nostalgic flair to it.
Yeah, I think the reason that this ranks so highly for me is partially because of the nostalgia of it. Having just rewatched it, I mean, it is still a really good episode. It definitely holds up. Is it as good as some other ones? I don't think so, but it's still definitely up there.
Oh, for sure. I think we should start off with some trivia questions that we came up with for each other.
Yeah.
Do you have a couple?
Yep, I have, let's see, several.
We'll do like a you go, I go type of deal.
Yep, let's do it.
So the whole point of this is going to be to try and keep each other on our toes while we're watching the episode, and let's see who can.
And I felt like when watching this too, there's really only two main people in the entire story, and not a whole lot really happens. So I'm guessing that a lot of our questions might overlap. We might have written down the same question because when I was watching this episode, I was like, "There's no way that he doesn't have some of these questions that I made up." So it'll be interesting to see what you thought of as for questions.
All right, let's go. We'll see you do the first one here.
All right, question number 1. Where was the party at?
He said like the west side of New York City.
Incorrect. Well, I don't know. He said Bedford Village. I don't know where that pertains to in New York City. But
I have it written down that it was in New York City, but I got one for you. What term of endearment did Millie call Bob at the beginning when she told him to wake up?
Oh shit. This is gonna be one of mine too, but I didn't think. I'm gonna go with Honey Bear.
She called him Old Tiger.
Oh.
You were close. Pretty good. What do you got?
All right. Second question. What's the first object they interact with that's not functional?
The telephone?
Correct.
According to Millie, what was the squirrel stuffed with?
Well, she thought it was alive at first until it knocked over. Did she think it was stuffed with sawdust?
Sawdust is correct.
Oh, okay.
You got it. You got another one?
Yep. What is the couple's name? Full name.
Bob and Millie Frazier.
Correct.
All right. I unfortunately had 2, but...
Oh, I have more. Okay,
you have
let's
more?
see.
I was going to do 2 to 3.
What is the grass made of?
Paper mache.
Yeah, but they say mache weird, don't they? Don't they say like mache?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it more when we get into that, but the Twilight Pone actually talked about how weird it is. You notice how weird it sounds when he says that? It sounds like something from a Rankin Bass film. Just, it's made of paper mache.
Yeah. I think that's just the way they talked back in the old days because, like, not a whole lot. Well, that's how they talked on camera because it's kind of like that, there's a word for it, like a transatlantic dialogue where they kind of like mixed up American English and British English into kind of like one kind of language where they took like what they thought was the fanciest parts of both into one. So, but yeah, I definitely noticed when he said paper mache, I was like, he says that in a really weird way.
Well, I got it right here.
Yep.
Well, this isn't grass. It's paper mache.
Paper mache.
It's definitely a little odd. All right, well, let's get right.
Hold on, I still got a couple.
You got some more.
Yeah, I have two more. What expression does Bob use in place of drunk?
Sleepy?
No.
He's like, I was
Tight.
sleepy. Tight.
Too tight to drive.
I do
Never
remember
heard that
that.
expression before. That was weird. And the last one, what's the name of the town that they're in?
Centerville.
Correct.
All right. So let's get into the basic plot of this story. This couple, Bob and Millie Fraser, they wake up. They have no idea where they are. And he thinks they must have got drunk last night, maybe crashed, and whoever found them brought them back to their house. And they decide to go check and say, hey, I bet they got bacon and eggs cooking right now. So they go downstairs. No one's there. Little things start getting even more strange when they try to use the telephone. The telephone is not functioning. They try and open the drawers, but nothing happens.
The drawer actually comes completely off. There is no drawer. It's like a wooden thing glued.
Right. Knowing the end of the episode, the twist, I would imagine no one is going to care about spoiling in this since it's a 60-year-old episode.
Well, then, too, also, like, spoiler alert right now, if you're listening to this podcast about a show you haven't seen, you probably want to watch it first because there's major spoilers for basically every episode. There's usually a twist at the end of every episode of The Twilight Zone.
So, something I have written down here, a lot of plowed talk. Did you notice that? When they first wake up in the room, they're saying, talking about maybe they got into a car wreck, but they used plowed. They're like, maybe you plowed a truck, and they just thought it was all.
I didn't notice that, but throughout the course of looking at this, though, I did notice this was the second episode ever, at least in America, where it shows a couple in bed together. The first episode was an earlier episode of The Twilight Zone where it shows a couple in bed together.
That's a strange piece of trivia. But I just thought it was oddly, like, sexual. They kept saying plowed. They said it, like, 4 times.
I mean, that could be just how people spoke in the 60s. Maybe they didn't say, oh, I got into a wreck. They said, I got into a plow or I got plowed.
So yeah. Moving on, so they check the fridge. Again, I think this has been brought up multiple times in different podcasts, but it is funny how he refers to it as stage bread, kind of breaking the fourth wall. Like, in any other episode of Twilight Zone, if it showed that would still be stage bread.
Yeah, I feel like it is weird. He probably should have said something like, oh, this is fake bread. Like, yeah, stage would imply that maybe we don't know much about Bob's occupation. Maybe he's an actor. Probably not, though.
Maybe. I don't know. He's kind of a pretentious douche. He could quite possibly be. He says quite a few other things that we'll get to that are kind of odd. Did you notice what else was in the fridge?
Yeah, so it had, there was the fake loaf of bread. There was a fake something else that also looked like bread, and then 2 boxes of peas.
I thought it was like an onion. It looked like a red onion in there as well.
I couldn't tell the color. It was in black and white.
So after they look in the fridge and there's stage bread in there, that's when we hear our first laugh from the little girl, which I thought was strange because if they're in that house, the little girl wouldn't have been able to see them.
She might be able to see them through windows and stuff, but what I was also thinking about when they had the fridge open was there's a lot of tiny little details in this, like, because this is supposed to be this little girl's dollhouse. Like, her dollhouse has a working fridge with a door that can open and tiny little fake food in it. Like, that must be so minuscule because they can fit into the palm of her hand. So imagine how even much smaller that thing of fake bread and the little fake peas are. That's like, you would lose it instantly. It's just unremarkably good detail for a...
Putting all of that aside, I mean, they can do interstellar travel, so You got to kind of put some disbelief in there.
Yeah, but it's a little girl. Like, what if she accidentally ended up swallowing it and choked on it or something? Like,
I mean, I don't think she'd choke on it. I don't think she'd be able to choke on the people.
yeah, true.
So after we hear the first little girl laugh, obviously they're like, what the hell? Hear the little girl laugh, and they walk outside, and they find that being outside is just as creepy. And another, it's a little nitpicky thing, but do you know, like, her hair was blowing in the wind?
I didn't notice her hair, but I literally wrote it down in my notes. I wrote, all of the trees are blowing. There is an excessive amount of wind.
Right, like we're
in this
inside right now,
dollhouse.
and there's no wind.
Yeah, like there shouldn't be wind. Although I guess if they're teeny tiny, maybe there is, like, when you scale down, maybe there is a
There could
kind
have been a
of
fan
breeze.
in the room or something.
Yeah, or not even just that, but like if you're small, then like what feels like no breeze at all to us, there might actually be like a teeny tiny little draft.
Just the
going
little
in.
girl making any movement whatsoever, I guess.
Yeah.
True. And then he refers to the town as Hicksville. And I don't know about you, but every house in that fucking neighborhood was like a mansion.
Yeah, that looked like a
So-
really nice town. I think that's just because
Hicksville.
they're supposed to be from like New York City, like in the city. So like they probably think that anything that doesn't have skyscrapers is probably Hicksville to them.
So after that, they're looking around just for a minute, and the first thing we see, they find a squirrel. And her first thought is that it's a trained squirrel. Because you run into those every day.
Well, then also she's not that far from it to clearly notice that this thing is dead and stuffed.
Isn't he cute?
All right, look, come on, honey.
No, shh, I think he's tame. Oh, come look.
Yeah. Oh, he's a real doll.
He's nice, baby. Hey, sweetheart.
When it fell, it actually did kind of seem real for a second.
I didn't see it look real at all. That thing just looked like just the most obviously stuffed squirrel sitting on a tree. Then she's also looking at it straight in the face too, from like maybe a foot away, like close enough to touch it. No one could be that dumb to think, oh yeah, this thing's just a trained squirrel. It's just trained to sit here and stare at me.
Well, it is a 1950s woman, Tyler.
This is a 1960s woman.
1964, I'm sorry. Did you notice there was one thing they were arguing about when they're talking about, like, will you let me drive? Just implying that if he drove, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, he does this quite a bit throughout the whole episode here, where he just kind of blames her, and then like she brings up the really good point, like, well, fuck you, like I had to drive because you were so wasted. But
So-
the whole time that they're outside too, my question is, how the hell do they not see that they are inside of a fake town where they should be able to look up and see like a ceiling and like windows and the rest of it? Because at the very end, when it pans out and kind of shows everything, like
Right.
there is not much around that town. Like you look up or you look really down any street, it's gonna show the rest of the alien spacecraft that you're in.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you kind of have to suspend disbelief for that. I was thinking about that as well, but also how often do you like look up and stare at the sky for more than a second? And especially being that small at that scale, they might not notice it. Maybe. So after the squirrel incident, they decide to go to a church because it's Sunday and that must be where everyone is. So they go to the church and he does his little, here's the church, here's the steeple little bit.
Here's the church. There's the steeple. Open the door.
And there's no people.
Bum, bum, bum. So after this, they go back outside. They're still trying to rationalize what's going on. Actually, he rings the bell first before they go outside. What that's going to do, I don't know. Then they find the fake tree, which that would mean, obviously it's a creepy situation, but when the tree falls over and you see the wood in the X pattern, that's what models look like, so you kind of should know they're in a model at that point. That's kind of a giveaway.
See, I was kind of thinking if this was happening to me at the point where they knock down the tree, my first two thoughts are going to be, okay, maybe I'm on a movie set, just kind of based off of the way the town's kind of set up and the fact that they have fake trees and fake squirrels and stuff like that, and like kind of it seems like the buildings are kind of built not really to inhabitate, but more just to kind of look like they're a living home. That'd be my first thought. My second thought would be, depending on the part of the country, maybe wandered into like a nuclear test site.
I have that written down as well, especially when they find the mannequin in the car.
Yeah.
That would have been a cool possible ending for it as well.
Yep.
It's either going to be, like you said, they're on a movie set, which that would have been cool, the nuclear test site, they're dead, or in a miniature for aliens. I mean, it really kind of has to be one of those.
Yep. Yeah.
Honestly, it's been so long since we've watched it the first time. I didn't see the miniature alien thing coming at all back in 2007 when I was 14.
Yeah. The first time I watched it, obviously, I was super surprised by the ending. I mean, obviously, you know that something's weird happening in the town. But yeah, in retrospect, I feel like if this was me, especially them being in New York, where like New York City, they probably film some movies there. My first thought probably would have jumped to, okay, somehow I got so drunk I stumbled onto a movie set and fell asleep here.
That
seems somewhat plausible.
So after the whole fake tree thing, they decide to enjoy a relaxing heater. And while they're smoking it, he drops it. And he catches some of the paper mache grass on fire. I was also what if they just let the whole thing burn? Would have we just saying, like, obviously the mom would have came in and threw, like, water on it, and they would just be drowned instantly. Or just fire extinguisher to them. And
then also, you bring up a good point, too. When it does show the paper mache grass, there's, like, cork underneath it, which kind of would have driven out the ideas of, okay, maybe this is a set, or maybe this is a like a nuke town, because why the hell would there be cork under the grass on either of those? That kind of brings the whole, okay, maybe this is a miniature set.
They then find a car with a mannequin in it, and he gets excited for a second, Bob does, because he's like, oh, we got a car, we can get the fuck out of here. But to no one's surprise who's watching it, there's no engine in it. Which, again, is kind of a weird thing. Again, nitpicking, but if they went through the hassle of, like, bringing a car back, why would they take the engine out? Unless this isn't the first people that this little girl have gotten a pet and they've learned from their mistake. Oh, they try and drive off.
Well, I don't think... my assumption was maybe just, like, never a functioning car to begin with. Like, maybe just this was what aliens made it. Like, you know how you'd make, like, a toy car, and obviously a toy car doesn't have an engine and can't function. My assumption was that they just made a miniature little car. They didn't, like, steal one from Earth.
Yeah. So after this, the wife is kind of in despair, and she comes to the realization that maybe they're dead. They crashed. And did you notice there's a weird, like, zoom in thing that it does on her while she's saying this?
No,
it, like, zooms in. I'll show you. They zoom in for a second, and then it's very odd.
I was driving along somewhere above Riverdale.
It's like a really small zoom.
And then it zooms out. The cameraman got excited.
Shadow.
Isn't that fucked up?
Yeah, that's really unnecessary.
After that strange thing happens, what do they hear, Tyler?
They hear the train.
And they get all excited again. They run to the train, and they go inside the car. And
well, first they try to go to the ticket booth, and there's no ticket guy there, obviously. And they're like, fuck it, we'll just go on the train anyway.
And I love when they get on the train, Millie goes, we have the whole car to ourselves. Like, no shit. In the last, like, hour, what has made you think that anyone else was going to be on the train? You haven't seen anybody, but...
And I feel like it would have been more relieving to see other people on the train. Be like, oh, good, I'm not the only one.
So the train goes, and they think that they're safe. And they start talking about, you were kind of scared there for a second, dollface. Oh, Bob. And then, where do they end back up?
They end back up in the exact same station they just left, exact same sign, and they...
Welcome to Centerville.
I think Bob, or one of them tries to say, oh, what if it's just a different part of the town or something like that? Like, the train couldn't possibly just go in a circle.
They were also they only went for, like, what? Less than 30 seconds around the train. They couldn't have been far anyway. So he goes, fuck this shit. Let's walk home. Let's just keep walking down the road, which I kind of wish they had because they would have just fallen off the edge of the world.
I mean, they essentially did try to do that, and then that's when, bum, 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 the little girl tries to grab him.
Well, I was thinking when they started walking home, and obviously we've both been hungover as fuck sometimes, this would be the worst thing to deal with when you are hungover. I don't know if you'd have adrenaline from like how scary things are, but it would just suck.
I mean, I feel like if I was hungover, I wouldn't have gotten out of bed at the beginning of the episode, and I would just laid there until eventually my hangover was gone. And at that point, then I'd wake up without a hangover and be like, okay, where the hell am I?
So after they're walking for a minute, us, the audience, sees a shadow go over and the terror on their face. And then we get a shot that's like a green screen shot of a hand, and it picks him up.
The worst CGI, like nothing's moving behind them. And then the exact opposite when it's CGI, like they're the ones that are stopped, and like it's the girl that's moving. Both ways, very
I actually
clunky.
have written down in my notes that, for 64, that was actually pretty good.
All it is a still frame with them moving in front of the still frame. Anyone could literally do that.
Maybe not in 1964.
No, in the 60s, that would have been even easier. They had rear projection for like when cars are driving and stuff, and that's actually like video playing in the background. They could easily do just to have one still frame and then moving in front of it. It makes it even easier.
Nevertheless, I thought it was a good effort for 64. So now we realize that they are in a model. Again, we see a zoomed out picture of the model.
Play the zoomed out picture of the model. I want to just show you another look at it, because from the moment, if this is actually what the town's supposed to look like, then from the moment they left their house, they should have immediately been like, well, we're going to model. Yeah, boom, right there. It's a really small town, too. There's like maybe like 5 houses. So they would have literally seen all 5 houses the minute they leave the front door.
And then we get the classic line. I think this is pretty much like the line you think of when you think of this episode, said by the mother of the little girl.
Be careful with your pets, dear. Daddy brought them all the way from Earth.
Oh, can I play with them, Mommy?
After lunch, dear. Right now, put them back.
No.
Go on.
The moral of what you've just seen is clear. If you drink, don't drive. And if your wife has had a couple, she shouldn't drive either. You might both just wake up with a whale of a headache in a deserted village in the Twilight Zone.
All right, that music at the end is so upliftingly happy and awkward. I wrote it down. I was like, why the hell did they end it with that?
I actually had, throughout the whole rest of the episode, the score was awesome. It actually was, like, the tension was good, and it was really cool.
Spooky,
and they ruin it with that.
It's just so jarring. And then also trying to tack on the whole, like,
the PSA of
don't drink and drive. And like, well, okay, like, obviously that was kind of that wasn't the main point of the story, but they kind of like got that point across without having to directly say it.
Right. Well, that's the episode in a nutshell.
Oh, and also something I just thought of while rewatching this time around, like not even last night, I didn't even think of it, but right now, I always assumed, having watched the episode, that humans are just really, really tiny compared to this alien species.
Mm-hmm.
But what if they kidnapped them, they're actually the same size, and then they just shrunk them down?
Yeah, and take another toke, but possibly.
I mean, it would make more sense than an alien race that's just like so freaking humongous that wouldn't even make sense they can exist that big.
Why wouldn't it make sense that they could exist that big?
Because if you get that big, then gravity would just like implode on you. Like creatures can only get so large.
That's probably what, like, little.
They'd have to live on a planet with such little gravity, which would mean it was a really small planet. Oh, it's just.
I don't know about that, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
No. So, I mean, that's how it works. So, I mean, now rewatching this, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this alien species just has shrinking tech, and they just kidnapped humans that were normal size and the same size about as them, and then they just shrunk them.
Let's agree to disagree. I think you're overestimating how gigantic the universe is.
I don't think so.
Or maybe they could be interdimensional beings. They never say they're from another planet. She just says from Earth, which could be a different dimension or something. Who knows?
Maybe. My other point, too, was I also written down, do you think the aliens will eventually get more people to fill up the town with so that Millie and Bob aren't going to be the only two stuck in this village? Maybe there's going to be like other people.
You're gonna be having swinger parties and stuff.
Well, I hope they feed them somehow because they obviously can't eat the fake
Well,
food that's in the fridge.
the mom refers to them as pets, so I would imagine, not toys, So I would imagine they're gonna feed them.
Yeah.
I'd be more apt to say the little girl's probably gonna squish them by accident.
But it's been all day and they haven't gotten any food.
Has it been all that? I mean,
yeah, they woke up.
Yeah, but I would imagine that the time. I don't think we really see.
She says, "Oh, it's gonna get dark soon," which means that if they woke up around like 9 in the morning and it's gonna get dark soon, well, then they've been awake for I don't know, 8 hours.
I just imagine that they were up as long as we were watching the episode. It's like it's only half an hour's passed or so. That's how I envisioned
based
it.
off of the dialogue, it sounds like they've been awake for quite some time. So,
let's go to ratings. So, IMDb has this currently in March of 2024 at an 8.1, which I actually think is pretty fair. Obviously, a 10 is arbitrary because it's going to be like what our favorite is. 9s are going to be like, they're not my favorite, but this is just no denying it's incredible. I was thinking the other day that like maybe giving it like a 7, but after rewatching it, like this is a really good one to show people who have never seen the Twilight Zone, and just from the nostalgic value alone, I think I'm going to have to give this an 8.
I also gave it an 8. I said... solid twist ending, doesn't drag itself out too long. Some episodes really just seem to drag and have a bunch of unnecessary detail. This one, like, it didn't stay too long. It built up in just the right speed. Like, we get a couple of these weird, like, oh, now the tree's fake, or oh, now the train's going in a circle. Like, each thing kind of builds off the other and being, like, a little bit more of an oh no kind of moment. So it doesn't feel like it lasted too long. It really built in a good way. The reason I'm not giving it like a full 10 though, like there are some weird nitpicky things I could get into, like about the whole, it doesn't make any sense that they can't see the end of the town, or like the fact that this girl is giant to them, so her voice should be like super deep to someone that's that small. Like it should sound like a ho 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 ho, which would be a funny thing to hear if you just keep hearing like ho 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 ho. I'm like, oh, what the fuck is that? But overall, like, yeah, solid
8s
twist.
all around.
Yeah.
You, me, and IMDb.
So what would you rename this episode if you could get the chance to?
Fuck, I totally forgot that we were doing that. The new name segment. Listeners, I did not do my due diligence. I will get better on that one. What did you come up with?
I came up with 4 different names, some of them a lot better than others. I think my number one pick for another name for this would be The After Party, because the whole thing happens because they got drunk at a party, and it's kind of like the consequences of like, oh, you drank too much and then you drove, so this is the after party. Another one that I wrote down that I liked, The Centerville of Nowhere.
Yeah.
And then some other ones, The Blackout, and The Real Fake Town.
Came up with The Hangover Part 2. Stopover in a Quiet Town. It's a damn good title.
I would disagree, because I kept trying to, like, I obviously know and love this episode, but every time I try to think of what it's called, it's not like an easily graspable name. I don't know. It's not something that's like, oh yeah, obviously it's called that. To Serve Man, boom. But it's kind of like songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's like, well, they don't say the word Bohemian Rhapsody in this. Like, it really has nothing to do with that. I feel like it's kind of the same with this episode. Like,
they should have just named it Stage Bread.
They should have named it something like, well, I think my ideas of The After Party or The Centerville
The After
of
Party.
Nowhere.
I think you're onto some of The After Party. It's almost there. That could be a good one.
Yeah. I don't know, something like that kind of plays more into the theme of it all.
All right, so on some bios here, like I mentioned at the beginning, this was written by Earl Hamner Jr., which he is kind of regarded in the Twilight Zone community that he's, out of the 4 main writers from the Twilight Zone, definitely the one that's lacking the most. I believe he did 8 episodes.
When you say lacking the most, like he just hasn't written the most, or you think he's the worst of the 4 writers?
No, he's definitely probably that's obviously an opinion-based thing, but if you look at the 8 episodes that he did, they're all kind of stinkers. I would say this is probably the best one that he did. Once we go through those 8, I think it'll be fun to judge which ones of his are the best.
Yep.
Because I know, like, Serling wrote, like, 80-something episodes, and then Matheson and Beaumont wrote a lot, and Earl Hamner Jr. is definitely kind of like the redheaded stepchild. This episode was directed by Ron Winston. I did not do my homework and look up what else he did.
So Ron Winston, he directed 1966 Ambush Bay, 1968 Don't Just Stand There, 1970 The Gamblers, 1967's Banning, and 1964 A Slow Fade to Black.
I've never heard of any of those movies.
Nope.
So the cast is obviously pretty small. There's only 4 characters in this. We had Barry Nelson, who played Bob, which I know, obviously, my favorite movie of all time. He plays Stuart Ullman in The Shining, the manager at the beginning, when he's giving Jack the interview.
It's been a long time since I watched The Shining.
Millie is played by Nancy Malone.
Post Malone's
mom.
great-grandmother.
Yes, everyone knows that. The little girl was played by Denise Lynn, and the mom was played by Karen Norris. Again, I will get better at this when...
I wonder why they didn't show the mom's face, too. Like, it's not like there would have been a second twist where she looks like the aliens from a different episode that we'll get to eventually.
Right. So we have everyone who's a diehard Twilight Zone fan will probably have these books, that Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic and The Twilight Zone Companion. And in Martin Graham Jr.'s Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic, he actually has written down how similar it is to Rod Serling's pilot episode, Where Is Everybody? Which is another kind of thing, a knock at Earl Hamner Jr., because he definitely aspires to be Rod. But
also, I think what really works in terms of this episode is budget-wise, this episode and episodes like the very first one, Where Is Everybody, probably super cheap. Like, this has total of 4 actors in it.
No, I'll go through. So Twilight Zone actually back in the day was very expensive.
But I'm saying this specific episode is probably cheap because all you had to do is pay 4 actors, and then for the set, it's just a fake town that they probably had somewhere out. I mean, could have been like Warner Brothers Studios backlot tour where they just have a fake town.
You want to get the the inflation calculator out here?
Yep. What year was this?
1963 is when it was filmed. The total production cost for this episode was $55,522.
$55,000 what?
$522.90.
So $55,522 in 1963 is worth $563,069 in today's
a little over $500,000 for this episode, which is 4 people and 1 set.
What's the average cost though of an episode nowadays? Though I'm guessing about $500,000 for 1 episode. Not bad.
That's great. Barry Nelson was paid $3,500 for this episode, and in Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic, it says that they shot this pretty quick, within a couple days.
$3,500 in 1963 is $35,000, essentially $35,500.
That's fucking nuts for a couple days of shooting.
Not even a couple days. Like, they could literally have shot this in 1 day.
That's how much he got paid. $3,500 for this episode.
That's insane. His acting wasn't even that good.
He got paid more than the director. The director got paid $1,200.
How much did Millie get paid?
It doesn't break it down. It says the cast in total, just a little over $6,000.
So if the cast in total got paid
$6,000,
he got more than half.
Yeah, he got like 55%. Which, I mean, I bet the little girl barely got any money.
Well, yeah, probably. And then also the mother probably barely got any. I mean, they're only in like
Earl Hamner Jr. got like $2,600 for writing it. The director got, like I said, $1,200. The producer and secretary got $1,600.
I mean, it's basically just multiply it by 1,000. So
Really? It's
Is
like
it-
1,000 times more? It's not...
Yeah, so... Oh, sorry, by 10 times more. So 2,600 becomes 26,000.
And to the people who are listening that also, like me, have listened to the Twilight Zone podcast and Twilight Pwn and all that, I know that they do the inflation calculation, but it has been a little over 10 years since they started. Things have changed quite a bit, even just in 10 years. So if people have a problem with us going over the inflation thing, if you don't like it, let us know. Or but I think it's going to be fun. I think it's one of those things that never really...
Yeah, it's just interesting to see.
What do we got here now?
I have some references in pop culture we could go over.
Oh, yeah. So now this is our segment, References in Pop Culture. Insert
bumper. So references in pop culture. So I had a couple here. None, I don't think any of them except for maybe one of these is a direct reference to this episode. I think there's a lot of things that happen in TV and movies where there's the general idea of someone being really tiny in a fake small town or something like that. So what I came up with was Beetlejuice, tiny people in a little fake town.
I was half paying attention when you said Beetlejuice. I just thought, I don't think so, pal.
Not that Beetlejuice, no. This is Beetlejuice with Michael Keaton. Another one, there is an episode of Jimmy Neutron called The Incredible Shrinking Town, where aliens come and shrink Jimmy's town of Retroville down.
I don't remember that one.
They use the people of the town as toys. So, I mean, that probably is more of a direct reference to this because basically follows it beat for beat. Solar Opposites, of course, there's the whole running gag of they shrink down people that they don't like, stick them inside their wall, and then kind of like keep them as pets there. So that could be a direct reference. The one that I found the most convincing, that's probably, there's no way that they made it without acknowledging the fact that there's an episode of Twilight Zone like it, was the episode of Pokemon called Sabrina, where they have to, they go to the gym of the psychic gym leader whose name's Sabrina, and she has there's a little girl that has psychic powers, and she essentially uses it to shrink them down if they lose and use them as toys.
That cake looks delicious.
Sabrina
Stage
wanted
cake.
to play with us,
Yep,
but I
stage
guess we're
cake.
gonna have lunch first. I wonder where she is.
Guess it's rude not to wait for her, but I can't resist. Ah! This stupid cake is fake!
Huh?
That's pretty good.
You're not gonna believe this, but we're inside a dollhouse.
This is a dollhouse?
Everything in here is made out of plastic, including the food.
How can that be?
Ah, what's that?
Hey, what's that?
Ah!
And look, there's even a little girl that wants to play with them.
Now I can play with you all.
Wow, she's pretty tall for a little girl.
Actually, I think we're the ones who got a lot smaller.
That is impressive. Yeah, I can't vaguely remember this, but that is very similar.
Yeah, I can't see whoever wrote this episode of Pokemon not having been inspired by this episode of the Twilight Zone. It just seems way too similar. So that's definitely the most clear cut of the pop culture references I could find.
I guess another thing I would like to do before we end this maiden voyage here, I think it would be really fun to, since this is our first episode, to go over our top 20 episodes of the Twilight Zone and see how much it changes over the next 3 years of doing this once a week.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Do you have yours up? Or
I do.
All right, let's hear it.
All right. In order, should I start with 20 or should I start with 1?
Let's start with 20. I like going down.
All right, I'll do my 20, you do your 20. How about that?
Okay.
All right, my number 20, Old Man in the Cave.
My number 20, On Thursday We Leave for Home.
My number 19, The Little People.
My number 19, Hocus Pocus and Frisbee.
My number 18, The Shelter.
My number 18, Mr. Dingle the Strong.
My number 17, Hocus Pocus and Frisbee.
My number 17, Printer's Devil.
16, The After Hours.
16, One for the Angels.
15, Nick of Time.
15, The Hitchhiker.
14, back there.
14, The Grave.
13, The Hunt.
13, Mr. Garrity and the Graves.
12, The Masks.
12, Stopover in a Quiet Town.
11, What You Need.
11, Steel.
10, The Grave.
10, To Serve Man.
9, The Trade-Ins.
9, Nothing in the Dark.
8, Hitchhiker.
8, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
7, 100 Yards Over the Rim.
7, It's a Good Life.
6, Stopover in a Quiet Town.
6, The Obsolete Man.
5, Number 12 Looks Just Like You.
Number 5, Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up?
Number 4, Midnight Sun.
4, Eye of the Beholder.
3, Obsolete Man.
3, Elegy.
2, To Serve Man.
2, A Stop at Willoughby.
And number 1, Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up?
And number 1 for me is 5 Characters in Search of an Exit. I can't imagine our number 1s are going to change.
I don't think so. And also, re-looking at my list, I don't think I had Eye of the Beholder on there, which I think is crazy. I think I just forgot about it somehow, but that should be in there. I don't know how I would change it around.
Take The Hunt out.
No.
I know that's another Earl Hamner Jr. as well. But
no, I would just obviously get rid of number 20, Old Man in the Cave, and just put it somewhere in my 20.
Also worth mentioning, I haven't seen half of season 4, and I haven't seen the later couple, probably like the last 10 or so in season 5.
Say I haven't seen basically any of season 4. And there's maybe like a handful in season 5 that I haven't seen.
Roll.
All right. Well,
was there? I think
the last thing is I'm going to show you some pictures.
Oh yes.
And you have to guess. All right. So
we're going to do a segment where Tyler is going to come up with an AI created picture of what episode we're doing next. So he's kind of in charge of what we're doing. We're going to try and mix it up. Obviously, we're not going to do like all the season 1s. We are going to do our season 4s every 8 or so, just so we don't have to go through all that. Even though there are a lot of good ones in season 4. I'm very excited for you to see those, but I'm excited for this part.
Yeah, so how this works was I just went onto an AI image generator, typed in kind of the key points of the episode, and got it to look aesthetically how I wanted. And now I'm going to show it over to Alex and see if you can guess what we're watching next week.
If you guys are wondering what the hell the picture is, so when I put this on YouTube, because I'm thinking YouTube is going to be for our main, like where everyone's going to listen to until we can maybe do something to get it on Spotify, but with the hosting fees, that might be expensive, so we might just do YouTube and Facebook for a while. I'm going to use the AI picture that Tyler gives me for the episode as the picture that's going to be up during the podcast. So this one, Stopover in a Quiet Town's pretty damn creepy, I think, and I'm sure they're all going to be, but I'm excited, and I hope I can guess it.
All right, so there was 2 that it generated that I really liked, and I can't decide which one's more encompassing of the episode, so I'm going to have you pick A or B.
A for Alex, yeah.
All right.
Is it the Rip Van Winkle caper?
It is Rip Van Winkle caper.
All right, it's a picture of a dude, and I was going to say Old Man in the Cave, but there's bags of money in the cave and a clock. The Rip Van Winkle caper.
Let me just show you what my other option was, too.
There's a drone in the picture of that one.
Yeah,
I think I like the other one better, actually.
Yeah, the reason I kind of like this one better is they actually were in like ski masks, like actual robbers, and there's multiple of them instead of just one guy, but yeah.
All right, well, next week we are doing Rip Van Winkle caper. Hope you guys continue to listen, and hopefully we get into a groove and it's a little bit more smooth from here on out, but thank you to anyone, if anyone is listening to this. We are going to be making a Facebook page, an email, and a YouTube channel. If anyone wants to comment stuff or anything of that nature. Anything else to say, Tyler, before we leave?
No, just thank you all for stepping into the Twilight Gnome.
This has been the Twilight Gnome.